So let's move on to the moderator's report. I will not read you this entire thing, but I really encourage everybody to look at your annual report every year. There's lots of really good stuff, and many people have taken time to give you the highlights in very concise form of what happened in the many ministries of this church, in the teams of this church. The financials are here, the generosity is here. There's lots of good stuff. I'd really encourage you to read that. Just a few points that I want to make sure everybody gets, even if you go against my advice and choose not to read the annual report, that I'd like to share with you here quickly this morning. So we just finished the second year of operating in a global pandemic. And I would just summarize by saying we adapted, we better defined who we are, we widened the welcome, and we remained generous. So first of all, we adapted. Waves of COVID come and go here in this country and around the world, and I think with all that's required to make navigating that possible, a special thanks is due to our wonderful staff, and I'd like to give them actually a round of applause in old school format. As you can imagine, this is not easy. Think of what Stephen's done trying to adjust the music program to be at home, and then here, and then separated, then online, then live streamed. It's really, really good stuff. We adapted in all ways, including the church office staffing, the way that we covered the building, the way youth programming worked. Early childhood operations had to adjust. Sharing of music, all that adjusted in the pandemic. Our monthly ministry meetings didn't miss a beat because we kept those going on Zoom. The quality of our worship streaming improved dramatically when new cameras were installed this year, and that has allowed YouTube services to improve. The silver lining of that technology, both the Zoom and the cameras here in the services, were that people are now able to participate wherever you are. You may be at home for whatever reason. You may be at a second home. You may be traveling. That's okay. You can still participate in worship live. You can participate in worship on a delayed basis. You can participate in ministry meetings. The life of the church just got extended more dramatically in the last year, and I'm really proud of that. And that's something that will continue. We also increased our use of social media this last year to welcome the rush of new families who moved to the suburbs, including our area. And that allows us to invite them to learn more about our church. Secondly, then, we have helped people better understand who we try to be in the world by better defining ourselves. We have a set of new value statements that you'll be beginning to see. There's 7. You've seen for a number of years now 4 statements from the staff, which have nicely tried to lay out for people, this is what Union Church is all about. And we have taken those, tweaked them slightly, and added to them, and you'll start to see those more in bulletins, on the website, and in some of our social media campaigns that will help people who are new to the community understand what we're all about. We also have a new vision statement that concisely expresses what we're trying to be in the world, and I'm very happy to see that that was printed on the front of your bulletin here this morning, if you happen to be in person. It says, living lives of love for God and all people. Now, on the one hand, that can be a catchy marketing phrase, which I really like it personally. If you let that sink in for a little bit, that statement says a whole lot. But in actuality, this is off of page 1 of our Constitution. We've had a very old statement that includes those words, and we're simply bringing those to a more current form. Thirdly, we are seeing signs of success as we widen the welcome. More families that attend our Union Church Early Childhood Program activities are asking about what the church is all about and what goes on in the church. There are many more visits to our websites. That's tied partly to the better word getting out and tied partly to the way social media works. When you click on a link and it takes you to a website, we can track that. We're also seeing, interestingly, and I must say this is not just a consistent trend, but in the month of January, if you look at the number of YouTube views on our worship services, they've gone up each of these four months, and I don't want to 4 weeks. I don't want to say that's always going to continue, but after just 1 week from last week's service, there were 186 people, 186 views of our worship service. And that just strikes me as, I think the word is getting out. I think people are tuning in, and it's great to see so many of you here today. The ability to serve new families arriving was helped when we decided to hire Allie KK as an associate minister in September. She helps fill an important gap there for us. And in December, Grant stepped up and completed his ordination. That increases his commitment to his existing focus on youth programming and mission work. And then finally, despite the pandemic and lower pledge income this last year, we did remain generous. We gave $171,000 in outreach donations this year. That's detailed in your annual report. On top of pledging, some members donated to the endowment. Others purchased the live stream technology. There was another member who paid for the beautiful new sign that's out in our front yard and probably be with us for the next 50 or 75 years as a beacon of Union Church. Members also give lots of their time, and we actually measured that this last year to try to get our arms around that. We totaled up more than 10,500 hours in the last year donated to be our church and to support our mission partners. That was in a year that doesn't have some of our biggest volunteer activities. There was no resale. There were no trips to Angola or Guatemala. There were not youth mission trips. We did not have a full VBS. All those things are big volunteer activities. To wrap your arms around what that kind of volunteer number means, if you value that time at just $15 an hour, that's $158,000 of value, again donated, amongst our church and to our mission partners. At the core of all this are the 89 people who were on our mission teams last year, but there are so many other things that go on in the life of this church that are not just the ministry teams that are important pieces of what we do as a church. As a great example of this generosity, longtime member Mary Bach had to move to Michigan this last year. And despite that, being hours away, she still volunteered her time to compile our annual report this last year. Mary, if you're online, thank you. Looking ahead, our Executive Council goals for 2022 include 3 major focuses: continuing our focus on generosity in all forms. Another great example of that generosity are the 17 volunteers and the 5 staff people who tirelessly work to move and make progress on our Before We Get to Mars program, now known as the Union Church Early Childhood Initiative, the idea of trying to take our quality early childhood programming and extend it to a lower income community. In their work, that is our second goal. We actually plan to open at least 1 new site this year in a site that will allow that programming to be available to other people outside our immediate community. And finally, we're going to work on increasing the use of small groups to provide connections to all members of all ages at a time where fewer and fewer people around the globe attend worship on Sunday morning. I still love it, but it doesn't seem to work for everybody, so we need to adapt with the times. And then finally, I just want to mention a personal goal that's come to my attention just in the last month. We have a group of people who are not benefiting from this gee whiz technology that we're using today. If you don't use a computer, you don't get email, and we send much of our communications today by email on Wednesdays and Fridays. They're terrific for me, but there are some people that don't get those. If you don't use a computer, you don't have access to YouTube, so you can't watch our online worship service. That's a problem, and I'm going to be working to fix that here over the next year. Those are my highlights, and let me turn it over to Mike for his senior minister's report.